Hello, and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in the series Freemasonry and Satanism, number 67, part 4. I was only going to do 3 parts on this book, The Ultimate World Order. But because of the name of this book and some other data that I have come across, something, a new word, not a new word, but a new word recently to me, synchronicity. Over the years, I've been doing this now 11 years of serious research, numerous times I said, what am I doing? And I wanted to walk away and go back to the life I was living before I started investigating what the heck is going on planet Earth with all the crazy secret societies and clearly identifiable Satanism on TV, programs, shows, symbols, corporations, activities, statements from a lot of people that are clearly satanic. What was it, Laton LaVey? The leader of the Church of Satan, Levon, I'll have to get his thing there and read it correctly, but he said, in a few years, everybody will be into the decadent lifestyle, because everybody's perverted, something like that. I'm thinking, well, what the heck is he saying? He goes, we're all that way. Pedophilia, homosexuality, bisexual, pansexual, have sex with anything and everybody, transgender. He said everybody's that way. And remember, this is the leader of the Church of Satan. And we know about the New World Order and the New Age. So I just thought I would explore more of this document, this book, The Ultimate World Order by Robert H. Williams, and his investigation of the book that was discovered in a secret library. You had to have permission to go and look at this book at this library. And clearly the name of this book says it all too. The Jewish Utopia. So I was thinking about this also. This book was published in 1932, before World War II, before the Holocaust, so-called. So what were these Jewish people thinking in 1932, before World War II, which started in 1939, 7 years later? And we know World War I was all about trying to get the Palestinians land for the Rothschilds, the Illuminati, bankster, Jewish Utopia people, to create the State of Israel. So just a lot of conspiracy things going on that apparently are not conspiracies when you can go find the book. And apparently the book was discovered in a library that not anybody could go to. You had to be probably a Jewish scholar, part of the Zionist New World Order people. And Robert Williams was a military man in the Secret Service, investigating subversive activities, communist activities, all kinds of crime. And he had his own newspaper, and so I thought I would just read some more from this book. And what I do when I see things that are kind of outlandish, just too much to believe, I draw a little line. See that yellow line by my finger there? It's my way of flagging it. So I thought I would just go through and read some of my flags. A little windy out here today in the mountains of North Carolina. So here I go. The Jewish Utopia Investigated, which was written by Professor Higger, a Jewish man. And so Robert Williams found this obscure book that you had to have permission to read and see. And he reviewed it, and in this book, The Ultimate World Order, is his review plus other information that he had researched during his lifetime. All right. So here's what he says. Now we know that unless the United States, as a nation, joins wholly, in fact and in spirit, in the Israel Zionist movement to promote the new social order, our nation is doomed if the Zionists win. The Zionists call the process of liquidation social surgery. So I did read that in my last 67 part 3. Social surgery. I guess that warrants repeating. So I can read all this here. Here it says on page 30 of the Jewish Utopia. So the ideal Israel will be considered superior only insofar as her light. The people of Israel will thus conquer spiritually the nations of the earth, so that Israel will be made high above all nations of the earth, so that Israel will be made high above all nations in praise, in name, and in glory. This is all going to make sense when I show you something else I discovered. Another page here, page 21. Our grandchildren must not be permitted to know that their ancestors came from Europe or anywhere but the Holy Land. Our grandchildren must be denied any knowledge of the history, struggles, and triumphs of our own people. They must assume that we all came from the tribes led by the scheming, bloody Moses of the Torah. Shall I read that again? Our grandchildren, remember, this is the Jewish people speaking, Higgins, professor, secret book, nobody can see. Our grandchildren must not be permitted to know that their ancestors came from Europe. What? Europe? Or anywhere but the Holy Land. Our grandchildren must be not denied any knowledge of the history, struggles, and triumphs of our own people. They must assume that we all came from the tribes led by the scheming, bloody Moses of the Torah. They must never know that their ancestors once enjoyed throughout untold ages in their tribal life sentient individual freedom under a fair and just code of laws, an elected king or chief, and a representative government, out of which sprang the U.S. Constitution and much of the English common law and modern parliamentary government. So their grandchildren must not know, never know, that their ancestors once enjoyed throughout untold ages in their tribal life, sentient, can't say the word, S-A-C-R-O-S-A-N-C-T, individual freedom under a fair and just code of laws, an elected king or chief and a representative government, out of which sprang the U.S. Constitution, and much of the English common law, and a modern parliamentary government. So where they are today is because they were living and enjoyed throughout untold ages representative government, and they don't want their grandchildren to ever know this once they take control of the world. The Jewish Utopia. Professor Higgins. Secret Library in Texas. Dr. Kingsley said the Teutonic, remember that word, tribes had the essentials of the modern Anglo-Saxon constitution. Who were the Teutonics? Originated the jury trial by 12 men, guaranteed property rights, and the freedom of the individual. So when they do this communism takeover, the revolution, that apparently is about to happen any day, New World Order, which was basically just a tool for the Illuminati, the Jewish Utopia. All right, I have a few more highlights here you can see. So why did I highlight them with my little flags? In general, the peoples of the world will be divided into two main groups, the Israelite and the non-Israelite. The former will be righteous. That's the Israelite. They will live in accordance with the wishes of the one universal God. They will be thirsty for knowledge and willing, even to the point of martyrdom, die, to spread ethical truths to the world. All the other peoples, on the other hand, will be known for their detestable practices, idolatry, worshiping idols, similar acts of wickedness. So I guess worshiping, praying to Jesus will be idolatry. They will be destroyed and will disappear from the earth before the ushering in of the ideal era. All those unrighteous nations will be called to judgment before they are punished and doomed. So before they even have a hearing here, they're already determined we're going to be punished and doomed if we're not an Israelite. The severe sentence of their doom will be pronounced upon them only after they have been given a fair trial. So they've already got the sentence dictated, but they want to make sure you have a fair trial before they pronounce your doom. And when it will have become evident that their existence would hinder the advent of the ideal era. Thus, at the coming of the Messiah, aren't these people controlling our world now and trying to say there is no God, and all the New Age followers are believing this, that maybe they are gods and they can listen to Aleister Crowley and do as thou wilt? The Jewish Utopia, 1932, before World War II, when they said they had the Holocaust. This is what the Jewish people were planning, some Jewish people. Are they Jewish people? They call it the Jewish Utopia. When all righteous nations will pay homage to the ideal righteous leader and offer gifts to him, the wicked and corrupt nations, by realizing the approach of their doom, will bring similar presents to the Messiah. Their gifts and pretended acknowledgement of the new era will be bluntly rejected. No ideal era of mankind can be established as long as there are peoples living idol worship, idolatrous. Funny, I can si hablo español and sprechen Sie Deutsch and speak languages, but some English words are tongue twisters to me. So, worshiping idols, ungodly lives, as long as there are oppressors of the righteous, friends of slavery, enemies of freedom. The phone ringeth. Anyways, on with the reading of the Ultimate World Order by Robert Williams and his investigation of the book that was discovered and published in 1932. So I suppose discovered sometime after that, before World War too. So you wonder, all these Jewish people who were supposed to be killed in Germany, by whom? Who was orchestrating all that? Who financed Hitler? Read the book, Who Financed Hitler by the Pools, and you will see it's the Illuminati banksters who financed Hitler, who were Zionist Jews. And I suspect the Jews that were killed were not Zionist Jews. Sabbatin, Shepherdic, and the Zionists are supposed to be Ashkenazi, which are from Europe, Germany, Druids, Nordics. Another cult. Interesting. What was the Nordic god? With the big sledgehammer. Anyways, moving on. No ideal era of mankind can be established as long as there are people living adulterous, ungodly lives. As long as there are oppressors of the righteous, that would be oppressors of the Jewish people, friends of slavery, enemies of freedom and liberty, and defiant enemies of God. Makes one question, which God? Hence Israel and other righteous nations will combat the combined forces of the wicked, unrighteous nations, and under the leadership of Gog and Magog, assembled for an attack upon the righteous nations in Palestine near Jerusalem. I think this is all biblical. The unrighteous will suffer a crushing defeat, and Zion will thenceforth remain the center of the kingdom of God. So on the bottom here, there's a little highlight. For centuries, the fanatical elements among the Jews, called Jewish nationalists or Zionists, have interpreted the Old Testament and their Talmud as a cunningly disguised plan for conquest, as some rebellious rabbis now are pointing out. From the Jewish utopia in 1932, these people's attitude about everybody else before World War II, when there was supposed to be a Holocaust. All right, let's find another highlighted one here. I'm skipping a lot of stuff, so you can go online and find the book. I found it, and that's why I got it in this binder. I printed it out. The Ultimate World Order by Robert H. Williams. When I do these book reviews, I'm not trying to read an entire book. Maybe motivate people to investigate themselves and come up with their own opinion. You don't have to take Rick Miracle's opinion. But this is a shortcut looking at my videos, and you can take notes and write down the names of books and find them, and you won't have to spend 11 years getting where I got. That's why I'm passing on the information. So I highlighted a little bit more. So what did I highlight? Let's see. By contrast with the freedom of the individual among the Teutonic tribes, the Jews, despite their fierce individualism and admirable skill in looking after their own interest, always managed and still manage to bind themselves in webs of private power, organizations, and cohesive laws. They are constantly today inventing some sort of organization to bring pressure on somebody or some governmental body to get something for nothing and to divide Gentiles, anybody who's not a Jew, and perhaps to provide highly paid jobs at the same time. Every Jew was a sea lawyer, gifted in interpreting his own rights. Labor unions, a Jewish invention, dictated wages and hours, and other unions fixed prices and conditions of business conduct and laws, and the rabbis stood above all these laws, even regulated charity. The owner of the fig tree could not completely strip the tree, but by law must leave some for the poor. Alright, another page. More highlights. All this will make sense on the second part of this video. It is the Anglo-Saxon who must be undermined. The Anglo-Saxon. So that would be people from England, Germany, Ireland, Scotland. White people. Who must be undermined if the Zionists are to win. It is the Anglo-Saxon who must be softened, brainwashed, made to outbreed with dark races, and leave the field to the Zionist strategists. This is not news to students of the subversive movements. Our own Army intelligence tried to warn us as early in 1920. The Chicago Tribune. So this is Robert Williams speaking this. Of June 19th of that year carried the intelligence release, telling about a movement within a movement, a Jewish world power movement hidden inside the communist movement. Now, this Robert Williams is obviously a much smarter man than me, and probably most people watching this video. He lived during this time. He was an intelligence officer during between World War I, maybe World War I and World War II. He wrote his book in 1957, so he was around then, 1957, after World War II. And he had his own publication, newsletter, about subversive movements and all these crazy things going on back then. So he's saying these things. That the Jewish world power movement hidden inside the communist movements. So when I say things, I don't make them up. I remember kind of what I read, and I read a lot so that I can make sure there's just a very investigated field that I have done of all kinds of different subjects. Psychic research, Jewish history, Anglo-Saxon, Nordic gods, religious, Jesus. You've seen my videos, remote viewing, communist movements, the Crusades, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins, Maxwell, Tex Mars, the American Israeli who moved to Israel and reported all in that last review I did, whatever the name of that book was. I'm up to 67 series right now, and hundreds of hours, couple hundred books, thousands of pictures. I've watched thousands of videos, hundreds of magazines I've purchased and read and highlighted and inventoried in my collection. So at some point we got to get it. There is something going on behind the scenes, and it's operating out of the United Nations right now, which are controlled by these. I call them freaks, psychopathic nuts. They want to depopulate the planet, and apparently Dr. Stephen Greer of the Serious Disclosure, the UFO hearings before Congress, even says they want to have a new civilization. Everywhere I read, they want to kill off this whole population and say that we are inferior. And they want to invent or redesign with DNA and cloning and eugenics a new race of beings. And apparently they want to destroy Christianity. They do not like morality. That's anybody who's moral and decent, they think is inferior and weak. But their do as thou wilt, as Aleister Crowley, the wickedest man alive, into pedophilia and child sacrifice murder, is highly looked upon by these people in the New Age cult movements. The TV programming you watch, the symbols, the all-seeing eye, the triangle, the devil sign with the horns. TV does program people. There's magazine articles, billboards. I saw that one commercial on YouTube. These two guys were standing in front of a mirror in the bathroom, obviously homosexuals. And one of them wrote a little heart. Wasn't that cute? And then the other one put a little I. And then the other one did a little U and put 2 dots over the U. And then the other one put a 2. I love you too. But that little U with the 2 dots, believe it or not, is a symbol for 666, the mark of the beast. And if you hit Alt on your computer, 666, you'll get this little U with the 2 little dots. So it is definitely this homosexual agenda. Transgender, pansexual, anything, have sex with anything. Adulterous, cheat on your spouses. Ashley Madison website, they guarantee confidentiality. But yet somebody hacked their site and took a bunch of the names and emails and are out there just disclosing that. A lot of them were .gov, G-O-V. So apparently thousands were working for the government using their computers to go on Madison Ashley to find somebody to cheat on their spouse with. But that little U with the 2 dots is Alt on your keyboard on your computer, 666. And if it doesn't work, hit the num-locks key, numeral locks key, and try it again, it'll work. Because I kept trying to do it, and I said, I don't believe this. Then I hit the nums lock key and tried it again. A little U with 2 dots, just like that gay commercial. So they're putting the 666 into the homosexual agenda, which is the New Age, which is basically, and you're going to see this is true from the documentation, is satanic and Lucifer worship. Ra, Osiris, Isis, Horus. They call it paganism because there's just a bunch of gods. Many gods, pagan. So more of my highlighted stuff here. And you can see probably why I went back and did number 4 on this 67 series. Alright, the Oriental, they're talking about people's races now, has heavy lids with slits for his dark, opaque eyes. His skin is dark and heavy. He is poker-faced. It is easy for him to deceive, and naturally, he is inclined to make use of the talents and facilities with which nature equipped him. That's what they're saying about Oriental people, Asian people. We, of thin, fair skin and light, wide eyes open, rarely can deceive, for long our faces are lie detectors. We must be brainwashed. We are so smug, so accustomed to security, success, and frankness, that we do not perceive that certain aliens moving in among us are utterly different. So he says we white people, Anglo-Saxons, are not aware that certain aliens moving in among us are utterly different. We are thus at a tragic disadvantage in the psychological war directed against us from behind the alien mask. Can't read it all, just got to skip over to my highlighted portions. This is before World War II, when they said they had the Holocaust, where a bunch of Jewish people were supposedly killed by the Hitler regime, which was put in place by the Illuminati Jewish people. The banksters who financed Hitler. Read the book by the Pools, Who Financed Hitler, and many other books, which we will go over. Okay, here's some more highlighted things I noticed when I read this a while back. And I haven't gone here and reviewed what I'm going to tell you now. I just decided to look for my highlights and read them off the cuff. If I highlighted, I must have highlighted them or flagged them for a reason. For this violence by certain incited Negroes against their white benefactors, we can thank the American Jewish Committee. Let me say that again. You can see I flagged it. Why did I flag it when I was reading it? It probably startled me. I said, oh my God, moment. For this violence by certain incited Negroes against their white benefactors, we can thank the American Jewish Committee, which told its members in its annual report, titled, American Jewish Committee Budget, 1953, that the AJC, the American Jewish Committee, was virtually the source and the overall guiding authority behind the race agitation and the so-called Civil Rights Revolution and all the related activities. Page 28. Oh my, stuff you read. All right, the same is true of our relationship with the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, a legal staff defending principally communist and fellow travelers in court actions. Thus, the American Jewish Committee is really behind the communist revolution in our country. Evidently, the white non-Jew has been a gullible fellow, easily herded by a crafty herdsman. When the Phoenicians were competing for dominance of the commerce of the Mediterranean and other known sea lands before the time of Christ, they used propaganda to scare off competition. Being Semitic, double first cousins of the Jews, they were great propaganda experts, I guess is what was there. All right, here I had a little ink mark I put down, you can see here. The communists want a communist world, which is basically they're disguised for socialists want a socialist world. But who's going to be in charge? Who's going to be a slave and work the farms and the manufacturing? Are they going to take care of those people? Are they going to live a decent life with freedom and vacations and appliances and the luxuries? According to this material, it says no. So those who are left alive and not part of these Jewish people, and not all Jewish people are in on this, as we shall see. The Shepedetic Jews and the Ashkenazi Jews, who probably are not real Jews. And if you look up Revelation in the last book of the Bible, Revelation 9, it says right there, God's words, not mine, Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. What you going to believe, the Bible or the TV? So the communists want a communist world, the Zionists a Jewish world. As the Zionists gain power, the fact that the communists are suckers become increasingly evident, for they destroy the resistance of the nations and races, while Zionist takes over. If Zionist wins, it must destroy its communist illegitimate child. So the Zionists have created the communists to do their bidding, and creating all the chaos and anarchy, unemployment, and all kinds of other problems, so that everybody will submit to some kind of rule. By whom? All these elite freaks on TV who tell you you can read the Obama health care bill after it's been passed. Or Obama now saying nobody can read the Pacific Trade Agreement. And if any congressman wants to read it, or senator, I suppose, they have to have special educational classes on secret security agreements, and are not allowed to take pictures or any kind of notes, and can't read it all, and can't tell the public what they read either. So what's in the Pacific Trade Agreement? I suspect there's a clause in there that says the American people have to be disarmed. And I suspect that the Pope coming to speak before the United Nations this September, this month, 10 days from now, plus or minus, and speak before Congress and meet with Obama. What's coming? Are they going to say a new world order is here for sustainable reasons and global warming, which is all fabricated? They have to enact this new world order, and they're already made it illegal, offensive, or you can get court-martialed in the military if you're talking about Jesus. So they hate the Jews. Many of them have always hated Jesus. If you don't know the story, Jesus was becoming very popular 2,000 years ago, and interfering with the hierarchy, the rulers, Jewish rabbis at that time, with all his healing people in charity and love. It was interfering with their domain. So they called him a rabble-rouser, and they wanted the Roman leader to kill him. But he was supposed to be the Son of God. And the Roman leader said, I'm not having this on my head and crucifying Jesus. And all the Jews in the audience, according to the Bible, not me, screamed and yelled, let it be on our heads and our children's heads. Oh my. So they killed Jesus. So for thousands of years has been a thorn in their side, and they still hate Jesus. And of course they hate Christians who worship Jesus, who was a Jew. So I don't think God is worried about who's a Jew and who is Spanish and who is Asian and who is white or black. We all have souls that are probably the same color. My opinion. But there are some individuals who thirst for power and all kinds of other evil goings-ons. Moving on. 6 steps to power. The spiritual conquest of the world by psychological warfare, at which the Jews are past masters, ought to be comparatively easy after the communist monster has ground up the races and nations, leaving only a dull, characterless, morally weak, homogenized mixture, a shorn like bleeding a like human flock. Wow. Shorn of traditions and moral standards to anchor to, shorn of the memory of a better life, which was once an ancestral heritage, shorn of the courage and character to fight for freedom and economic well-being. So they say we don't have any of those attributes anymore, because they made sure with the TV and all their programming, mind control. Communism, by its very nature, hating the capable, successful individuals, is self-destructive. But it destroys the races as it destroys itself. By what steps will Israel become a dominant power? And how will the Jews of Israel enjoy the happy era? The author has already told us that there would be a bloody Armageddon which would break the strength of the unrighteous nations, those who resist the Jewish revolution. That would have been Robert Williams. I think this would have been Professor Higger. Before the nations of the world recognize Israel as the ideal people, Israel will have to undergo a spiritual development. The Jew will have to be prepared to lead the world to righteousness. Israel will thus become a light, a symbol for the ideal life for the nations, so that in the words of Isaiah, the nations shall walk at Israel's light, and kings at the brightness of Israel's rising. The people of Israel will thus conquer spiritually the nations of the earth, so that Israel will be made high above all nations in praise, and in name, and in glory. And this was before World War II, when supposedly the Germans killed all the Jews. This is what the Jews were saying and thinking. And again, not all Jews. So who is these people who wrote this material, these Zionist Jews, say they're experts at subversion and inciting hatred and creating wars and revolutions. So who are we to believe? Them and their word here? Or the TV? Or the communist teachers in the school systems? I have to move my video production company because the sun is shining his light on me. Little pun there. Alright, moving on to some more highlights of mine when I read this. That's why I decided to do one more video on this. It's an interesting conversation. Examining these sentences and paragraphs. This is precisely what the Talmud teaches, A Jew must play fair with his fellow Jew. As for non-Jews, the Talmud, by Talmudic standards, anything goes that will not bring reprisals on the Jews. To be fair with the author, I searched his Utopia from cover to cover, trying to find any requirements. So this is Robert Williams saying he searched Mr. Professor Higge's work on the Jewish Utopia to find any requirements that the righteous Jews also exercise truth and justice towards non-Jews. Nowhere in the book did I find a hint of any such requirement. Throughout, the book calls for righteousness on the part of all people, conformity by all of us to the Jewish program, but nowhere is the obligation of the righteous or fair play reciprocal. So all of we have to be fair and decent to them, but they don't have to be fair and decent to us. A little more, and I think I've made my point. You can go look up this book document. I think I've indicated that it's probably important information. Published in 1932, before World War II, when apparently the Germans were killing all those Jews in concentration camps. But from my understanding, there weren't just Jews in those concentration camps or manufacturing facilities. All kinds of people. And the people who were financing the whole World War II thing were the same people who organized World War I with President Wilson and got an agreement with the UK government, United Kingdom, London, for the Balfour Agreement that if the Bank of Germany, England, and France, the Rothschild, head of the Illuminati Freemasonic family, financed England, who was losing the war with Germany, and brought the Americans into the war, and then London would win the war, and then they would help the Zionist Jews who won in Utopia, 1932, this book, get their land in Palestine to create Israel, which was needed to accomplish their New World Order, and enslaving everybody with the communists, which they say they fabricated, and causing all the hatred between the whites and the black, which they say they're masters of. What does it take for people to get it? And now they're doing all this propaganda trying to say that the Muslims and Islam are the evil demons. Who's orchestrating this insightful information? These people in the Jewish Utopia, Professor Higger, which, by the way, the Jewish Utopia, he didn't write it all. It was a compilation of a lot of their documents over thousands of years, and what their plan was to get there, dominate the world, and kill off all those unwanted people who would be inconvenient in their New World Order to have around. Moving on, Zionists to police the world. I can't make this stuff up. And by the way, that's why I do book reviews. I don't want it to be me telling people what I think. I read books and I review them. And of course I am at liberty to interpret it the way I do, and you're at liberty to interpret it the way you do. That's fair. So when I say I am a Christian, I'm not trying to convince you that you have to go out and be a Christian. If I say that I think the Ten Commandments are a good moral guideline to follow. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery and cheat on your spouse, or don't bear false witness. One God. Obey, and honor your mother and father. Go look up the Ten Commandments and look at them. They're not horrible commandments. Pretty simple. The world would be a better place if people followed the commandments. No murdering and stealing. All right, moving on. Zionists to police the world. Jerusalem is to be the source of the law, and that means, of course, headquarters of the world police. The prophecy of Isaiah will thus be fulfilled. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the law from Jerusalem. The city of Jerusalem will thus become the metropolis of the whole world, and the nations will walk in her spiritual light. Remember, Lucifer is called the light bearer. Might behoove us to keep that in mind. The Freemasons in France gave us the Statue of Liberty. The Freemasons, also, their god, says in some of their documents, is Lucifer, the light bearer. And they gave us the Statue of Liberty, which seems to have a man's face, Hermes, carrying a torch, the light bearer. And in all the symbolism you see, like on the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill, you'll see the rays behind the all-seeing eye, and in all kinds of sun bank and corporate symbols, the sun's rays, a beam of light, the light bearer, the sun god. Moving on here, the nations as political powers must disappear, leaving only cultural groups, possibly somewhere along the geographical lines of the politically and racially extinct nations. All will recognize one flag or standard bearing the name of God. And again, I ask, which God? And a lot of people now are brainwashed, and they say there is no God, period. These people who want to take over the world don't think that way. So we can say that all the people into the New Age occult movement have been deceived and lied to. The Jewish youth, some formerly converted to Christianity, worked underground under assumed names, now as teachers and now as vagabond preachers. So they say here they infiltrated the Christian church. In Spain in the 14th and 15th centuries, Jews so thoroughly infiltrated the Catholic Church as to take it over almost completely. 14th and 15th centuries. Isn't this the 20th century? So a few centuries ago, according to this, the Jews so thoroughly infiltrated the Catholic Church as to take it over almost completely. Isabella, during her 20-year struggle against subversion, had Jewish father confessors, as well as finance ministers, and even the cardinal was Jewish. Remember, they killed Jesus. They had the Roman leader kill Jesus, who didn't want to do it, and they said, it'll be on our heads and our children's heads. And then they've taken over the Jesus Church, Catholic Church, Christianity, and they had Jesus killed. Something a little conflicting there. They hate Christianity. So if they hate it and they took over the church to discredit it, I guess that would explain why people today are been fooled and deceived and don't believe in God and think that the church is evil or corrupt. They would be right. But that doesn't mean there isn't a true Christianity and that Jesus didn't live. They would be wrong, in my opinion. And I'm entitled to my opinion, and you are entitled to yours. In the past 30 years, the communists, by the sworn testimony of ex-communists, have made great headway infiltrating the Protestant pulpits, and now we see many ministers who look Jewish and who preach the social gospel of racial suicide in the kingdom of God on earth. So powerful are they, so cowardly, most of our leaders, that the investigating committees have been unable to conduct a successful exposure of this near-fatal subversion. There is nothing on earth, not even a barbed wire fence, to keep communist and Zionist agents from invading our churches and preaching racial integration in the name of Christianity. Guess we can see why I flagged that one. In the summer of 1956, the American Jewish Committee outlined to its agents the methods of its propaganda and strategy board has developed for destroying Christmas observances in the American schools. So in 56, they planned to destroy Christian Christmas, Santa Claus, Christmas observances, the birth of Christ in the American schools. The Jewish anti-Christians recommended to their agents a quiet reconnaissance before any forays are launched against Christmas observances in any school system. So they had to do it quietly, behind the scenes, deceptively. Wouldn't that be the devil being deceptive? And it should never be a one-man foray. Once the reconnaissance has been made, the necessary information obtained, the time is right for intensive discussions among representative local Jewish leaders and rabbis. If the American Jewish Committee and associates can wipe out any knowledge of Christianity, they will find it easier to impose the Torah on our grandchildren. Are you wondering why I flagged some things? Why I made it number 4 video on this? Thought about it for the last couple days. I said I was only going to do 3 videos on this Ultimate World Order by Robert Williams in 1957 about the discovered book in 1932 called The Jewish Utopia by Professor Higger of a Texas university in a secret library, and you couldn't look at the Jewish Utopia unless you had special permission. What did they have to hide? Are we reading what they had to hide? What would people have thought if they'd have had this material back then? Alright, let me just see if there's anything else I really want to flag. Alright. A little bit more and then I'm going to move on to another subject that ought to be interesting. You can see I flagged this here. One here and one here. So why, when I read this weeks ago, did I flag it? The kingdom that Jesus, according to the New Testament account, speaks of is more mystical, inward, and personal. The New Testament is mainly concerned not with the earthly, but rather the heavenly kingdom of God. What's important there is, as I keep saying, we are spiritual beings in these biological bodies. Whether you're a Christian or a Jewish person, Hindu, Buddhist, atheist, agnostic, any religion, Islam, Muslim, we're spiritual beings. So the question is, if we're all the same kind of spiritual beings, do some people have a propensity, a desire to be evil, like Jack the Ripper, Hitler, President Woodrow Wilson, conspiring to get America into the war, deceiving the American people, and many people throughout history, murderers, shooters, killers, murderers, thieves. Their conscience doesn't bother them. They think it's okay to get whatever they want. Like Aleister Crowley says, do as thou wilt. You can kill, murder, steal, pedophilia, homosexuality, sodomy, anything you want. And then, of course, there are people who, again, we're spiritual beings in biological bodies, who believe that we're spiritual beings and that there is a God, a leader of the spiritual beings. And remember, in the Bible, Satan and a third of the angels were cast out of heaven. So when we leave this body, this planet, this life, we have to answer for our actions on this planet. But some people, you don't even need that to be a good person and know better than to steal and murder and commit adultery and bear false witness. And covet other people's belongings. Your neighbor has a Mercedes and you're seething and you would commit murder to get his car or his wife or steal his gold. Coveting, that's number 9th commandment. I think number 10 is do not bear false witness. So some people just have a natural propensity. You don't have to tell them, they just would not do evil things. And the biggest problem that I see is we people who have a natural propensity to be decent people, who would not covet and conspire to kill, murder, and rob our neighbor to get his belongings, out of our natural instincts. So people are not all born good or bad. Each individual has a choice. And I suspect that God, in his infinite wisdom, put us in these bodies on this planet so that we would have an opportunity to exercise our choice. And those choices would have something to do where we wind up in the hereafter. It's just my interpretation of reality. You don't have to scare me with the Ten Commandments. I just have an instinct for being a decent person. And the evil people have an instinct, like a wolf or a snake, to scheme and deceive. And we're reading this material. Who could write this stuff? So Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews? But now is my kingdom not from hence. So Jesus says, when the devil, Satan, in the Bible, said to Jesus back in these times, get on your knee and worship me, and I will give you all the kingdoms on earth. Because Satan, Lucifer, was ruling the earth, rules the earth now, tempts people, in my opinion. I'm not trying to be a preacher here. I'm reading the stuff of these people's plan to take over the planet and kill off many people. It might behoove us to find out why. What the game plan is. All right, one more thing I highlighted. Though the author shows that he interprets the prophets as working for a universal state of Israel, the reader may observe that he seems to contradict his earlier statements, that only certain chosen Jews will be invited. The Shinto-like character of the Zionist religion, the religion of the Jewish radical political economic nationalism, has contracted to the true religion. You can see why when Robert Williams discovered the Jewish Utopia book in a secret library, why he wrote his book, The Ultimate World Order. Okay, I'm going to just finish here. There's more I could read, but I have something else I want to discuss. Okay, here it says, the Jewish and non-Jewish flocks are to be made to believe that the righteous Jews are descended from God. The ruler shall be the Holy One. All the world must worship the Jewish king as God. When will the utopia begin? When is the utopia to be established? Do the Zionist planners expect to bring about the commercial and political fulfillment of their interpretation of the prophecies? What they call God's promise to the Jews in our lifetime. What is the timetable for these peace lovers for bringing about a final war? We find many partial answers in the Jewish Utopia, according to Robert Williams. Many milestones by which we can at least hazard some guesses. Obviously, the setting up of a Jewish state in Palestine was a milestone. The Zionists did that in 1948 without God, but with the help of Harry Truman and the Soviet Union. Israel is being developed and beautified, with a foreign capital, of course. The papers in August 1957 announced plans of building a $500 million port in Ashdod, shipping port. The will of one of the British Rothschilds leaves fabulous millions to help erect and beautify a capitol building, and perhaps museums and the like. So that will be the Rothschilds. Plans are proceeding for development of irrigation. Israel is developing some atomic plants for peaceful uses, of course. Right? Little wink there. Peaceful uses. My opinion. They have 300 nukes, so it's said if you look it up. And they have something called a Samson option. So if the other countries of the world try to stop them, they're going to push the button and unleash all those nukes on world's major cities. They say, so if we go down, everybody goes down. The Samson option. Look it up, don't believe me. In some other industry, with secrets taken quite openly from American industry and laboratories, as for instance through the information gathering agency, normally called the espionage net, known as the Tech Union, which operates in university and industrial establishments. The United States has been established, and the Congress of the United States officially authorized the flying of the United Nations flag above Old Glory on the United Nations building. So we have the United Nations flag flying higher than the American flag. You and I would be held guilty of treason, and rightly so, if we flew a flag above our flag. Thus begins and grows the nucleus of the World Police Force, and the UN is purely a Jewish invention. Higger says, Professor Higger, who wrote The Jewish Utopia, the nations will first unite for the purpose of calling upon the name of the Lord to serve him. And the United Nations has a big black stone in the meditation room. Something representing Saturn, which is Satan. And Mecca, for the Muslims, Islam, when they go to Ramadan, they have this big black stone that they all walk around. And there was another one in the satanic witchcraft. They have a big black stone, an altar where they sacrifice people. Stuff you learn when you read. The UN is to have a righteous aspect, as here stated. Its inventors intended the religion to be Jewish, and could be thus reason why religion has been conspicuously kept out of the UN so far, leaving the way clear. But if you look up the United Nations meditation room, you'll see it does have a religion. The New Age religion. The East-West division of the world is nearly complete. The Muslim world of some 300 million people have been largely shifted away from us towards the communist camp. The Zionist Jews have done a clever job. Like I said, there's more I could read on this, but at some point people got to go get it and highlight it themselves and read it. The Ultimate World Order, as pictured by The Jewish Utopia by Robert H. Williams. All right, something interesting I want to share. Well, I've been reading another book lately. I'm always reading 3 or 4 books at the same time. A few pages one day of one book, a few pages the next day of another book. I have about 500 books in my collection. And where I get the books is when you're reading a book. And sometimes when the author makes statements about something, he puts a little tiny number next to that sentence, which is called a citation. And then you go to the back of the book. They reference a lot of other books in the book you're reading, where that material came from. So about 10 years ago, when I was reading a book and this author said something, and I said, is that true? And I looked at the little citation, went to the back of the book, and I bought that book. And when I'm reading that book, and that author says something, and he has a little citation, I look in the back of the book, and then I order that book. That's where I got all my books. It's like a detective following the trail back. Where did this information come from? How can it be verified? So, hence I have about 500 books. Closets full of books, bookcases full of books, boxes full of books. I could spend the rest of my life investigating this stuff. So anyways, always wanted to, I got so many books I wanted to read already, but I haven't read them. But I am reading this one right now. The Black Sun. It's kind of an ominous name. The Montauk's Nazi-Tibetan Connection. Peter Moon. A fascinating book. You can see that I'm halfway through it almost. All my little tabs. All my highlighted things. That's how I do it. I just read and highlight. Very thorough. So then when I do make a video like this, I already pre-read it, I know what I highlighted, and I can trust myself to share it with the videos, people who watch my videos. This book, I came across a particular chapter, chapter 11, that just kind of gelled with what I was doing with the Jewish Utopia, and a little bit more added information, the Teutonics, which was sort of the religion of the Nazis. So what do the Nazis have to do with the Zionists? And why, when I read the Jewish Utopia, they said they didn't want their people to know that they actually came from Europe, Northern Europe, which is where the Teutonics came from. So who are these Zionists? And in the Bible it says Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. So are the Ashkenazi Jews, and the Ashkenazi has Nazi in it, the ones who control Israel right now, that look down and treat the Sephardic Jews poorly, the ones who actually have the same bloodline as the original Hebrews and Semitic, which by all the Arabs, whether you're Jewish or not, has a Semitic bloodline. So if you're anti-Semitic, as I said before, you just have to be anti-Arab. Forget Jewish. But they don't want people to know the truth about reality, how it really works. So apparently these Nazis, Aryans, who want the superior Aryan race, and the Zionists, who want the superior Jewish race, you got two races vying and thinking that they are the superior, perfect people, human. So I'm scratching my head. I go, there's got to be a connection. Well, there is. And even with the Ashkenazis coming from Northern Europe, Druids, gods, with the ruins and magic and all kinds of symbols. And of course the Jews are into the Kabbalah, Hollywood, magic, mind control, inciting revolutions, everything I just read. And then the Germans wanted a superior race and rule the world, the Aryans, and create a new world order. And we got a book I showed you, and I could show you that again, and I will in my future videos, that Hitler wrote called My New World Order, My New Order. So when we read the Jewish Utopia, the Protocols of Zion, all these other books I'm going over by these elitist Jewish folks, who even condemn Sephardic are good Jewish people, and the ones I suspect that were killed in Germany during World War II, were the Sephardics, the ones who weren't part of the clan or tribe who want to rule the world and kill everybody off, which is Germany, the elites, the Nazis, and the Aryans who wanted to rule the world and kill everybody off. What do they have to do with Montauk, which is on Long Island, at the end of Long Island, where there was a military base during World War II, with huge antennas called a sage antenna. And apparently they found out that when you turn these antennas on, they affect the minds of people for miles around. People would get dizzy, pass out, couldn't think, electronic equipment would go bad. And then with the Philadelphia experiment, they put these transmitters all on this big ship, the USS Eldridge, I think it was. You can look up the Philadelphia experiment, and there's a whole movie about it on YouTube. You can watch for free. So when they turned on those transmitters on the ship, it disappeared. It moved in time and space. And in Project Montauk at the end of Long Island, New York, a bunch of Nazis were there. And who controlled all the money? Wilson and Rockefeller and Chase's. So the money men were the Zionists. So the Nazis and the Zionists were working towards the same goal and performing black ops science research that the public doesn't know about. And apparently we're trying to bend time and space. Where do we get that from in 2015 today, with the Hadron Collider going on in Switzerland right now, where they're talking about bending time and space? And they got a statue of Shiva, the demonic god, out front, and the symbol is 666. And on the New York Empire State Building 2 weeks ago, they put big pictures of Kali, the demonic god of the Hindus, on the Empire State Building. A few weeks ago before that, they put a goat on the Hoover Dam, a gigantic goat, which is, of course, represents the devil. So the Satanist activities and symbolism is everywhere. And this book talks about the occultic religion that Hitler was into. And apparently after World War II, the United States was on a race to get to the laboratories and vaults of research material of the Germans. And England was after some of the artifacts and information. Russia was after some of the information. France was after some of the information. They were all making a beeline to get into Germany at the end of the war, to get all the old rockets, flying saucer, apparently, equipment, the scientists, the paperwork, the occultic stuff that Hitler and all his scientists were into. Quite an interesting collage of reality that most people are not aware of. Bending time and space, making ships invisible, opening time portals, CERN right now in Switzerland, with the Shiva demonic god out there, matching with the religious aspects of the documents I just read, and which I will read and research in the future. So anyways, let's get back to this book. The Black Sun, the Montauk's Nazi-Tibetan Connection. And fascinating material. Look at this god of Moloch on there. That was chapter 4. So I want to do a couple of videos just on this book review, but I thought, and during this review right now, the number 4 on the Ultimate World Order by Robert Williams, I would discuss this chapter, Secrets of Judah, and of course that would include the Jews, tribe of Judah. And the Black Sun talks about the crazy goings-on in the laboratories at the end of New York, Montauk, of opening, bending time and space and time portals and making things invisible, communicating with other kinds of beings, and manifesting demons right there on the base. Some kind of Frankenstein monster they manifested right out of thin air that started ravaging everything up. Was it true or is it false? Is it too much to believe? What is reality? I think St. Mark in the Bible I've been reading, everywhere Jesus was going, people who were possessed, he would demand that that spiritual demon leave that person, and that person would return to normal. Or somebody would be blind, and he would rub his eyes, and the person could see. They would be deaf, and he would make them hear. They would have the plague, and he would heal them. They would be have leprosy, and he would heal them. This is a new age. This is old age. This is in the Bible. This is what Jesus did. We are spiritual beings in biological bodies. Okay, now that I've explained all that, let me read The Secret of Judah. See if you don't think this is just beyond belief, bizarre. As was said earlier, Jan had special connections to secret societies in Germany. So Peter Moon talks about the people in his investigation into the Montauk base, where they were doing mind control, abducting young boys, and opening time portals, and using all kinds of psychic research and everything. Very bizarre. Get Peter Moon's books, you'll be blown away. So Jan had special connections to secret societies in Germany. So Jan was somebody he met who knew things. Some of the characters he knows are in their 90s and were present prior to Hitler's involvement in these traditions. Many of them have lived a long life because they are vegetarians and eat a healthy diet. It may surprise you at the rationale underlying such vegetarianism is based upon a ahimsa. This is a Sanskrit word which literally means not to injure. And ahimsa is really a doctrine that all life is integrated, and that no living creature should suffer violence or harm. Thus, these German vegetarians do not eat beef, chicken, or fish. It gets somewhere, hang on. So I've highlighted it, like I always do. So here's The Secret of Judah, chapter 11. So we've got all this other stuff we could investigate, but you can get the book or wait for my future video. So Jan is not a member of these societies, nor is he a neo-Nazi. Information has come to him in a similar fashion to the way data has been released to me about Montauk and related esoteric subjects. And by the way, it's the same way that, as I said earlier in this video, that I wanted to walk away from this investigation. What the heck is going on in the world? What is reality all about? Numerous times. I used to have a sailboat, a barbecue grill, a house with a swimming pool, and parties all the time. I didn't need this. But once I started investigating, every time I tried to walk away, some book or some person or something would just plop right in my face, and I would go, oh my God, that's connected to everything that I'm researching. It's like somebody paving the path for me to get one book after another book after another book. If you wondered how this sequence of events plays out, I don't know. It just comes to me what to do. So anyways, that's how Peter Moon here says a lot of his investigation worked out. And his friend Jan, that's how his investigation worked out. These people, these things just pop out of nowhere. You're sitting there talking to somebody, and they tell you stuff, and you go, oh, it happened to me at my jazz club I hang out on Wednesday nights. This one guy was into reflexology. He was talking to another friend of mine and said he could remove blockages from people on things that inhibited their, or lowered their quality of life. Like somebody can have a blockage and not be getting along with people, or afraid of heights, or afraid of taking on challenges, and he could use psychic research and try to help them clear those blockages. But synchronicity is that some things just happen that are just too bizarre to believe. Running into somebody at the right moment that you hadn't seen in 20 years when you needed them. Synchronicity. Happened to me right on my street here today where I live. My neighbor's cat attacked a hummingbird. And they're about this big. It was buzzing right on a flower, and the cat leaped at it and killed it. And my neighbor was quite distraught. I didn't know any of this, but I was cleaning out some boxes where I had some more of these books, and I came across an old picture with the flower and a hummingbird, and I walked down there because I'd given her 2 of these pictures that I got from somewhere in my life. And I gave it to her, and she almost started to cry, and she goes, oh, my cat just killed a hummingbird. Synchronicity. That just, I told you the truth, that really just happened with the hummingbird in the picture. So Peter Moon says synchronicity. His friend Jan says synchronicity. Where they get this information, how they make these discoveries. And even in this chapter I'm going to read, Peter Moon says this is kind of too bizarre to believe. His investigation just keeps, the dominoes keep falling. All right, set the groundwork up for that conversation. So information has come to him in a similar fashion to the way that data has been released to me about Montauk, that base at the end of Long Island where the Germans were visiting during World War II. In cahoots with apparently American Zionists in the United States. We know President Roosevelt was conspiring to get into the war and were rearming our factories for warfare before the people even knew there was going to be a war. They knew there was going to be a war. And this is 2015. They're preparing, if anybody pays attention to the news, for World War III. That's why all this stuff I do is very relevant. Related esoteric subjects, that would be the occult, demonic beings, interdimensional travel, souls, spirits, Lucifer, Satanism. Right here it says it, the secrets of Judah. Okay, now we can read the book and we'll all know what we're talking about. We have more than a few things in common. It has been necessary to assimilate his information and take it a step further by placing it in a broader context. When Jan van Helsing spoke, there was no doubt in my mind that I was hearing a story much closer to the heart of the Third Reich than anything I had read in the various books on the subject. Hitler's was the Third Reich. He was not only German, but he had relevant connection and was communicating a live tradition as well as a secret one. Jan explained to me that after the Berlin Wall crumbled, certain information could no longer be contained. Secret societies such as the Knights Templar, remember this series is Freemasonry and Satanism, and the Freemasons are a derivative, came from the Knights Templars. Offshoot. Apparently, they probably still think they're Knights Templars, like George Bush's skull and bones. They have a lot of Knights Templar symbolism. Knights of Malta that the king and queen belong to. The Vatican's involved in. Knights of Malta. Knights of Columbus. Rosicrucians. Jesuits. Zionist. Illuminati. Freemasonry. All these organizations that in the Jewish Utopia and the Ultimate World Order book we just reviewed, it says they just spent all their time creating these secret societies just to keep eating at the world. The phone ringeth again. It's a little bit after 5 on Sunday, September 13th. Promises to be an interesting month to see what happens when the Pope gets here and speaks before Congress and speaks at the United Nations. Wonder how relevant it'll have to this material. Hopefully nothing happens. I don't want the New World Order to come and everybody say, no way, I'm not taking the mark of the beast. You can't have my rifle. I don't want to be a slave. Everything we've been studying. I've been studying and sharing with my videos. When I say we, it's those people who choose to watch my videos. Thank you very much. Give me a thumbs up. I appreciate that. It kind of offsets those people out there who want to give me a thumbs down for doing serious research. I'm not trying to fabricate anything here or force anything on anybody, but we should open up our minds and find out what the heck is going on. So back here with Jan and Peter Moon, Montauk Air Force Base at the end of Long Island, the Nazis, and the Secrets of Judah. Interesting mix combination there. So synchronicity we discussed. Secret societies such as the Knights Templar, which had been severely repressed under the East German government, were now coming forward. And remember, during the couple hundred years ago, sometime, there was a courier in Germany who lightning struck him. I don't know if it was a courier on a horse or whatever. And you can look this up. And the officials found a pouch with something called a plan for the New World Order. So the Freemasonic plan for the New World Order, the Communist Manifesto for the New World Order, and the Protocols of Zion in the New World Order, and the Jewish Utopia we just said in the New World Order, and apparently the one Bible of the Jews called the Talmud, that they don't want anybody to see, details all the nasty affairs of taking over the world and how to treat non-Jews. And then we know World War I was planned to get the land of Israel, New World Order stuff. World War II was planned and financed by the Zionist Illuminati bankster leaders, too. And they're planning World War III. Moving on here. And releasing what had been closely guarded secrets. So after World War II and the tearing down of the Berlin Wall, Peter Moon met his friend Jan, and he got all kinds of information. Jan was severely sidetracked in his own personal investigations. And I'm only reading my highlighted stuff here, so it seems like I'm missing a space. I'm just trying to get in this video what I can. You can get the book. I ordered 2 more of Peter Moon's books. Found them on Abe Used Books. You can go and get and buy new books. He was investigated by the German government for purposes of prosecution. So Jan wrote a book about the information he discovered as a German, and the German government was trying to prosecute him. His book was subsequently banned by the district attorney. He also faced a stiff fine which would ruin him financially. Well, then it behoove us to find out why the German government was after this guy Jan that met with Peter Moon, and we're all researching the same subject. Secret Societies and Their Power in the 20th Century is the title of Jan's books. Wow, that could be like my Freemasonry and Satanism. Secret Societies and the Power in the 20th Century. Became a bestseller with 50,000 copies being sold in Europe. As it became more popular, the book caught the attention of the German government and was banned at being insightful to the masses. The book was primarily about political conspiracy and included only a few chapters on the esoteric subjects. The main controversy which got Jan into trouble has to do with the Jewish issue. He included the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, a document which conventional historians claim to be a forgery. Conspiracy historians do not necessarily accept this view. And I even have read books by Rabbi Marvin Antelman and Henry Ford, Henry Ford had it in his books, the automaker, that I'm going to go over some more of his material. But Henry Macau, PhD Jewish author in Canada, the Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world, has the protocols as authentic. So we've got plenty of Jewish rabbis and PhD people who are saying the protocols of Zion that we've been going over, the battle plan for taking over the world and destroying everybody, are real. So in here, this one guy who was 50,000 copies in Germany, and the government banned his book, had the Protocols of Zion in his book, a document which conventional historians claim to be a forgery. Conspiracy historians do not necessarily accept this view. Their main point is if the protocols were a forgery, they are the exact methodology through which a group such as the Illuminati would use to control world politics. Or, as we just went over, the Jewish Utopia explains all this in 1932, published before World War II by Professor Higger in a secret vault in the Texas University Library. So it seems to me we can conclude that the Protocols of Zion were not meant for our eyes, and are in fact a true guide for their plan, which if you look at history, they've been following the plan to a T. So whatever the truth about the protocols is, including them in a book, is not going to win support from organizations like the B'nai B'rith and the Anti-Defamation League. And I think about this a couple times. What other race of people out there, religion, nationality, has an Anti-Defamation League? The Chinese, the French, the Russians, the Brazilians, Mexicans, Canadians, Protestants, Catholics, Muslims, Islam, Hindu, Buddha. Nobody has an Anti-Defamation League and all these groups. And who's the largest political action committee in the United States controlling the U.S. government? The Jewish political action committees. So these people, certainly, and the few of them, are dominating the masses with deception. Even to the point where if stuff comes out, you get prosecuted or probably murdered. Unfortunately for him, certain esoteric information revealed in his work is easy for people to misconstrue. He suffered severe consequences. In spite of the fact that Jan says point blank in his book that he is not anti-Semitic, his critics have not cut him any slack. He even goes to lengths to explain his views that the true Jewish people are not part of any conspiracy. See why I thought this was important? So who are the Jewish people? The ones in the Bible that says Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. And in the Jewish Utopia we just read, those people said we never want our children to know that they came from Northern European descent. Who are they? Even though Jan was not treated fairly by his critics, the problem he encountered is quite understandable. I'm outside here in the mountains of North Carolina. It's a little chilly today. Before I go any further into more secretive information Jan revealed to me, it is necessary to clear up the entire Jewish issue once and for all. A little breezy. Even if it's not fair, it is easy to understand why the German government took actions to suppress the book. Massive immigration in Germany has totally changed the culture. I personally found it to be a bigger melting pot than the United States. The original Aryan culture appears to be going by the boards. This has given rise to neo-Nazi and other hate-oriented groups. It is sort of ironic, as the Indo-European Aryans destroyed various cultures of indigenous peoples around the world, the pendulum is now swinging in the other direction. So the world was dominated by these Anglo-Nazis, Indo-European Aryans, and now apparently the white people are being diluted, invaded. Jan explained to me that the Freemason symbols I had seen in Frankfurt were the result of Jewish influences and control in modern Germany. Remember, my series is Freemasonry and Satanism. He literally claimed that Jewish factions currently run the country of Germany. This book was written okay, copyright 1997, so almost before the year 2000. Just to put the dates in context. I do know that war reparations are still being paid by Germany to fund the state of Israel. Well, they're sucking the United States dry of money. 90 billion from 47 to 75 or something, when the whole rest of the world didn't get 90 billion. And they're still taking money and controlling our government and destroying our culture and our country. And they got Jade Helm going on now with troops all across the country. If not nothing less, they're intimidating the people, not helping the economy. All these fear-mongering going on with plagues and terrorism that they're faking, and many other things. Buying hollow point bullets, building FEMA camps. Something strange going on. All right, some of them goes as so far to think that World War II was manipulated by the Zionist Jews to engineer a situation where the Germans would fund Israel. This sort of thinking is common in Germany. Jan insisted I turn off my tape recorder. He wanted to tell me something that was not allowed to be spoken of in Germany. The secret he was unveiling had to do with the Black Knights, a group who traced their origin back to the original Knights Templar. According to his research, the Black Knights are the legitimate heirs of the Knights Templar, and who were burned at the stake during the purge of the Inquisition. Jan said that the Nazis, via the Black Knights, had an ancient manuscript in their hands that had once belonged to the Templars. Before that, it belonged to the scribes of Israel. So the Zionist Jewish folks had this document, and the Templars and the Freemasons in Germany had this document. And both of them, or all of them, appear to be trying to create and dominate a new world order and depopulate the planet by 85%, that they call inferior races. The precious secret contained in this manuscript, you listen to this up now, the precious secret contained in this manuscript is that the Hebrew scribes identified their God as the Al-Shadi. The Hebrew scribes identified their God as the El-Shaddai, S-H-A-D-D-A-I, the outcast angel of Satan. Last sentence, fourth sentence from the bottom. The Black Sun, Peter Moon's book. So is this all Freemasonry, Satanism, Illuminati, Nazis, Israel? Is this making things a little clearer? You see why I wanted to add this to this video? It apparently had the same effect on leading proponents of the Aryan cause, inflamed their anti-Semitism. So these Aryans, who think that they were the superior people, Germany's Hitler, reading these documents saying that the scribes said that their God was Satan. Moving on. The identification of the beast as God in any religion is only an esoteric reference to the fact that the physical plane is encoded with the 666 energy. So I have a slight tendency here to believe that Peter Moon is trying to play down the Satanism thought. Let's see what he says here. This subject was covered in his Pyramids of the Montauk. Now, Peter Moon was a remote viewer psychic, by the way. So he knew a lot of things. This was covered. The numerology of the beast equated to 26, as did the number YVYW, the proper name of God to the Jews, in which the name Jehovah is a bastardization. Keep in mind that we are a carbon-based universe. Within the carbon atom contains 6 neutrons and 6 electrons and 6 protons. I might point out, keep having all these little sidebars, but Monsanto, the genetically modified foods that are unfriendly to the human body, cause tumors and cancer to even rats, equals 666 in a numerology calculator. They got something called a Vera chip that they want to chip us all with. If I looked up, one of the words was 666 in the numerology calculator. Witchcraft, 666 in a numerology calculator. Computer is 666 in a numerology calculator. Aleister Crowley changed the spelling of his name to be 666 in a numerology calculator. Santa Claus is 666 in a numerology calculator. Get it? A guy in a red suit magically goes down your chimney? Doesn't Satan usually represented as a red guy, red suit? And he's magical, he can pop down your chimney? The games they play with our heads. Okay, so anyways, it seems that he was kind of trying to discard this whole concept. It only becomes a god for worship in its degenerative aspects. So I don't want to taint this just with my opinion. I'm saying what Peter Moon said here. It is obvious that in times past, the misconception of 666 as the beast was used as a means with which to incite hatred against Jews or whoever. I still find it suspicious that a lot of evil things equals 666 in a numerology calculator. It's magic. It's occultism. And by the way, there were many magicians and seriously educated occultisms, witchcraft magicians, who actually, they called it making the language more beautiful. But they actually revamped English, revamped Spanish, revamped French, and a lot of languages to make them more beautiful. What I suspect they did is they rearranged the spelling to make the words more magical. They were putting magic in words. Words are vibrations. Vibrations causes manifestations when you pray or whatever. There's more going on. This is not me creating that idea. It's written in books that they did try to re-beautify. And who were the ones who were re-beautifying the languages? It was these magicians for the courts of the queens and the kings of the kingdoms. Shakespeare was part of that. So anyways, recognize the predicament and situation of this universe has been misrepresented into a thing of fear and foreboding. The fear serves as a demon designed to prevent you from finding out the true nature of things. So I get a kind of a tinge here that Peter Moon's more into the New Age and slanting some of the thinking that way, which I do not subscribe to. Although I don't think there's anything wrong with healing people like Jesus did in St. Mark. Go read it. And casting out demons. Get it? Casting out demons. And even the Vatican has been training more priests to do exorcisms. And the Hollywood stars and people. Johnny Depp, Pirates of the Caribbean, says he gets possessed sometimes by 30 entities. Marilyn Monroe was supposedly possessed. Gene Roddenberry says he would go into meditative states and get storylines from the other side. Lucille Ball would meditate, use Ouija boards or whatever, and have some of the information dictated for different things. There's a Satanism in Hollywood. Go look up that video. Explains it all. And I ordered 2 books, which I will go over. that are referenced in that video. That apparently all these movie stars, to be doing those very artistic, creative roles, a lot of them, call upon entities to possess them, to help them. And they do. Crazy? Is that a good thing? Does God want people to do that in the Bible? It says no. But again, using a pendulum, finding water, healing people, I'm not opposed to investigating those things, helping people, clearing blockages, helping people resolve issues. So there's this fine line about what's good and bad. All the cultures all over the world had shamans who would go into meditative states, under drug-induced meditative states, and find cures to help people and solve community problems. But then every now and then, like in Peru or Mexico, the Mayans, you'd get an evil shaman who would use these magical powers for evil. Maybe he wanted somebody's wife or somebody's money. So the souls inside of us can go either way. The knowledge may not necessarily be bad. But when you got people like the Nazis or the Zionists planning on taking over the world, and they have that knowledge, you have an oh my God moment. Al-Shadi, the god of the so-called scribes said was their god, who was Satan, as the god of the Jews, is not only a statement that prompted the authorities to ban Jan's book. We said the name of that here earlier. What was the name of his book? Secret Societies and Their Power in the 20th Century. By Jan, what's his full name? Jan Van Helsing, Helsing. Alright, moving on. Trying to finish this video up. We know there were other quotations from the New Testament and the Jewish Talmud, which apparently is a very nasty book, telling them that they're better than everybody else and can treat us other humans like dogs and rape our children and wives and kill us and steal from us. And it's okay with their God for them to do that. Esoteric tradition of mankind, which, if properly studied, reveals the basic underlining of all existence. Jews, Muslims, Christians, Aryans, and everyone else occupy a spot on the wheel of life, New Age information. All are tied to the hub, New Age information. The various factions are like different colored spokes, believing their color to be the preferred one. If we choose to assimilate our highest creative aspect, we see from the Creator's view and are thereby obliged to look at the vast array of all the spokes within the wheel. Unfortunately, those who seek to manipulate mankind have formatted religions in such a way as to control the emotions and political inclinations of the masses. Isn't that what we're talking about? Control the emotions and political inclination of the masses. Further, I'll go along there, mind controlling and deceiving everybody. The inner truths are only for a select few. Religion has found a way to polarize mankind. Whatever the relative truth may be concerning the potential adversarial role of Jews in society, there is no question that Jan's book polarized the German government and would have done the same to many Jewish groups as well. We have to remember that when we tackle subjects as intriguing as the Nazis and their mystical connections, we cannot stop and get trapped by polarized thinking, which includes the judgment of this is good and that is bad. Again, New Age treatment. Aleister Crowley said in his Book of the Law, there is no such thing as bad, but do as thou wilt, which I completely disagree with. And even Jesus described what is good and the way to get to heaven. And the Ten Commandments. So it's the Ten Commandments or do as thou wilt, all the decadent, perverted activities that these New Age groups are trying to promote. And some of the New Age material may be a valid field of investigation and helpful information and abilities for mankind. But from what we read about the Nazis and the Jewish utopia, they don't seem to have any kind of benevolent intent. The most interesting aspect of the Jews is not their political or conspiratorial intrigues. So here Peter Moon is saying political and conspiratorial intrigues. It is the sacred nature of their Hebrew alphabet. See, we're talking about magic. As was briefly discussed in his other book, Peter Moon, Pyramids of Montauk. This discovery is actually the work of Stan Tunan, and he deserves all the credit as he spent over a decade researching it. All right, it's Monday, September 14th. I want to continue with this video. The Black Sun. Anyways, I left a little marker where I left off. For you, it's only a second ago. For me, it's a day ago. So apparently, if you take a cross-section of a donut or a torus, the shape of the universe according to physicists, as was discussed in one of Peter Moon's previous books, Pyramids of Montauk. And as I said earlier in this video, I ordered a couple more of his books. And I did say that he was into remote viewing. I'm not quite sure in what aspect he was, but obviously with the Montauk program, he is aware of remote viewing and looking forward and back in time with apparently the equipment they had at Montauk. Electronic equipment, transmitters, crazy things they could do. Alright, so we were talking about the letters of the Hebrews, magic, and it says here a vortex shape that will delineate all 27 letters of the Hebrew alphabet if a shadow is cast on it from 27 different angles. For the most part, traditional Jewish sources have not heard of this, nor do they fully appreciate its meanings or implications. Remember, the Jewish people, a lot of them, not all of them, are into the Kabbalah. Some Jewish people are not religious at all. Some don't believe in God, some just don't care, they just happen to be Jewish, descendants of Jewish families. But then some are very serious, as we have been studying and learning, that the Hebrew language was rendered to conform to sacred geometric patterns, means that whoever put the language together was operating with a consciousness above that of an ordinary human. I keep saying we are spiritual beings in these biological bodies, so I guess in a way we all could be operating on a higher level, if we were to so choose and study. So where does that leave us with witchcraft? Alright, we get a clue as to who was behind this religious and divine language when we examine the etymology of the word Judah, the name for the strongest of the 12 tribes of Israel. Judah was the name of a Hebrew territory named after Judah, the fourth son of Jacob. The English word is derived from the Hebrew word Yahudad, or Yahadad, however they say it. Pause it, you can interpret it. Alright, pronounced Yahudad, I had it right. Notice the striking similarity in the pronunciation to that of Tuhuti, the more proper pronunciation of which is Tuhute, the Egyptian god of magic. There we go. Takes a while to get there, but we get there. Of the Egyptian god of magic and knowledge. If you do not believe that this is a meaningful coincidence, then consider the etymology of the word Hebrew. It derives from the Hebrew word Ibra, literally meaning one across from the river. If the Hebrews were using their own words for one across the river, they would likely be referring to the Nile. Here we go again. The dollar bill with the pyramid, the all-seeing eye. Egyptian hieroglyphics. This becomes clear when you consider that the word Ibrai sounds very close to the word ibis, the patron animal of the Tuhate, who was usually portrayed as an ibis or heron. Hebrew is not the only sacred language which reveals such mysteries. It is just one of many. Actually, there is a mother tongue from which the Hebrew and other sacred languages, Greek, Arabic, Sanskrit, and Tibetan, are a few were derived. We will discuss this a bit later on. So I guess the point of all this with the Jewish utopia and the Nazis and these people vying for world domination, how it affects the rest of us, so this Jade Helm thing, trying to destroy Christianity and promoting the decadent, homosexual, adultery, bisexual, pansexual, transgender, anything goes, Aleister Crowley, the law, book of the law, do as thou wilt, which contradicts the Ten Commandments from the Bible. So we get back to this God of the Bible telling people not to kill and steal, and the God of these other people, gods, plural, pagan, who tell them they can do anything, including murder and stealing and maybe genocide, 85% reduction in population across the planet. Billions of people murdered. They caused World War I, World War II, the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, Vietnamese War, Korean War, all the 9/11, all the Middle East wars, killing off presidents and leaders throughout the world, setting up dictatorships. A lot of people know this is true. But their God says you can do anything and kill anyone, abduct children, pedophilia, having sex with children, then probably killing them, and in their religious ceremonies, I hate to say this, Satanism and Illuminati and God knows which of the other ones, drinking the blood of the sacrificed people. Frankenstein come to mind. They're doing cloning, Monsanto, genetically modified foods and animals and fish, strange creatures washing up on the beach. Well, that's why all this is applicable. So when we read this, we just have to have a broader awareness of reality that we live in. That's the key. Then we can make decisions. These birds were abundant along the Nile and were treated as sacred. They were never disturbed. The English word ibis is derived from the Egyptian hib, which again brings us back to the sound of the word Hebrew. Even the word ibex, a goat with long curved horns, which they use a lot in those satanic rituals. Even Madonna all her dancers had goats' heads masked with long horns. They do this a lot. Even that big goat that they portrayed or projected onto the Hoover Dam, gigantic size, which is a representation of the goat, the devil, which is one of the shenanigans, goings-on they do in the Freemasonic lodges and the other Masonic lodges, where they bring in a goat and apparently initiates ride the goat naked and apparently have sex with the goats. The crazy goings-on in those secret lodges. So here we go. The goat with long curved horns derives from the Alpine language signifying climber, as if to the capstone of the Great Pyramid. The etymology, etymological, labyrinth, delineated above demonstrates that both the Teutonic and the Hebrew traditions, the Teutonics would have been the Norse gods up around the Eastern Europe and Poland and Germany and Bavaria and Ukraine and parts of Russia, the Norse gods, Odin and all that, their old religion. And then the Hebrew tradition, we know they came from, Moses helped them escape for freedom after 400 years of slavery by the Egyptians. And it says here, the above delineates Teutonic and Hebrew traditions derived from a common source of Tuhate sitting in the middle of the crossroads. So we know that the Germans wanted to be the superior race, and we know that the Hebrews want to be a superior race. The Jews that call themselves Jews but are not, which are probably from the Teutonic area. They want to, sitting across the middle of the crossroads. The etymology of both namesakes suggests that Egypt was the ancient cultural center. And that's where they have the pyramids and all the hieroglyphics, again with the pyramid on the dollar bill and part of the Freemasonic lodges, Illuminati, Rosicrucian, Zionism, and all the other symbols of the snake and the all-seeing eye and the triangles and all that. Full circle here. Original indigenous Egyptians, a dark-skinned people. But it is not controversial at all to say that there was some darkness in the skin. The Celtic tribes immigrated from Central Asia and made their way to Egypt. I guess that would be up there around Scotland and Ireland. Once there, they lived quite compatibly with the Pharaoh ruling establishment, and with this New World Order bringing about some kind of king or Pharaoh. What's it going to be? And they want to rule out of Israel, Tel Aviv, and Jerusalem, as we reviewed in the Jewish Utopia. And as we're seeing in reality right now, where even the Pope and the United Nations and the President, everybody's calling for a one world order, a one world currency, a one world religion, and for purposes of sustainability, everybody will have to probably be microchipped and monitored as to their usages of the Earth's resources. In other words, everybody only gets a little tiny bit of what they need to survive. And the frills and benefits of luxurious living, like having your own car, will be gone. Probably like communism, everybody will be on a commune in some kind of assigned to a farm or a manufacturing plant, probably for life. And if you don't comply, all they have to do is turn your chip off. Once there, they lived quite compatibly with the Pharaoh's ruling establishment. Both peoples contributed to the Egyptian legacy that we know today. A cultural break during the time of Ramses II is symbolized in the story of Moses taking the Hebrews across the Red Sea. The term Hebrews in this sense actually refers to a potpourri of different peoples, including the Celts, the Celtics. We also know during this time period that a Celtic man by the name of Nui married a Pharaoh's daughter, Scota. Their descendants named Scotland in her honor. The Scottish islands of the Hebrides are an obvious reference to the Hebrew, or Hebron, the city south of Jerusalem. So we're tying everything from Ireland to Germany to Jerusalem to Egypt all together. And most people are oblivious to all of this. But apparently these people who are ruling our planet right now plan on a huge change on planet Earth with this one world order. The musical chairs of names goes on for infinity, but it is clear that Egypt was the cultural melting pot from which many great traditions derived. If one bothers to study the matter deeply, they will discover that the entire Jewish and Christian faiths were utterly and completely based upon the Egyptian religion. That's some people's philosophy. Unfortunately, most people do not realize this because the Egyptian religion has been distorted or poorly explained by historians. It is apparent that the Hebrew Torah is comparable to the tarot or rota wheel of the Egyptians. And I'm thinking about the tarot cards. Number 13 being the death card and all that. Sounds more like New Age or pagan religion to me. The very word rabbi phonetically derives from Ra, which is one of the gods of Egypt, the Egyptian sun god. That's why we have the sun symbol even on the dollar bill behind the eye, and on many corporate logos and everywhere, the all-seeing eye and the sun god. None of the above is meant to imply that the Hebrews stole the Egyptian religion. The very word Hebe signifies that the Jews were carrying the holy cup of Melchizedek, some leader, at least in a metaphorical, if not in a physical sense. In the Greek language, the word Hebe means youth. In Greek myth, Hebe was the goddess of youth and was the cupbearer of the gods. The shift of power from the Egyptians remained with the Hebrews until the time of Solomon. Remember, the Freemasons want to rebuild King Solomon's temple. And once rebuilt according to prophecy, that's when this new king will arrive who will rule the world in this Jewish utopia. It was actually part of a greater design that can be pinpointed to correspond to the orbital mechanics of the universe. Just as life uses different artifices as it evolves in an effort to survive, so does Tuhati, as an archetypical creature of life, manifest his message along different avenues. Different environments require different solutions with appropriate manifestations. Referring back to the ancient manuscript of the Knights Templar, we find a remarkable synchronicity. The document refers to Jesus speaking to the Teutons serving in the Roman legion. That would be the people from Poland, Ukraine, Bavaria, Germany, the Teutons. And some of them were serving in the Roman legions. He tells them quite specifically that it was their people he had chosen. So could this be why the Aryans, the white people, feel that they are the chosen people? The Aryan supremists of Germany took this ball and ran with it. They were seeking the same status, get this, that the Jews had long since claimed the chosen people. So you got the Aryans, the Ku Klux Klans, Freemasons, Illuminati, banksters, connected with the Rothschilds, Rockefeller, Chases, and now these Ashkenazi Jews who are controlling Israel, suppressing the Sephardic Jews who have original bloodlines to the Semitic, the Arabs, which are the descendants who left Egypt from slavery. See how all this connects? So apparently the Germans, who were vying for the, as Hitler called it, my world order, and as the Pope is now spouting the New World Order, who is a Jesuit, which is the assassin or military arm of the Vatican, why did they make him Pope? Are they planning on a war on the people? On a new crusade? They've switched from Christianity over to this other religion? And now they're going to start killing Christians who won't convert to the, again, new religion that they've chosen. Does that mean they were wrong before? The above references should make it clear that both traditions derive their power and impetus from the same source, Tuhati. Common ground was not recognized and the situation deteriorated until into polarized consciousness. While esoteric information was clearly being misinterpreted, it was also being manipulated. You think? Now they're manipulating everybody to buy this new age, do as thou wilt, and being homosexual, transsexual, transgender, adulterous, pansexual, pedophilia is good and normal. And those people who don't accept it will be haters. I suspect, in my opinion, God is watching, and all will not bode well if this evil path is continued. Just my opinion. In a depth, and many other people's opinion, in a depth study of etymology, in-depth study of etymology will ultimately reveal the common thread of all civilizations. That's why they want a one world order. A prime example is the name Ararat, the mountain where Noah landed in his fabled ark. It was this general area of the planet on which mankind arose. The name Ararat has an uncanny synchronicity with the word Aryan, the white race. Science has never delineated any racial difference between Jews and Aryans. The difference between the two are religious and cultural. The confusion and rivalry between various groups on earth can be all traced back to the ancient legend of the Tower of Babylon. This is the story where God punished mankind for trying to reach the top of that tower. Knowledge, a concept which is symbolized in the capstone of the Great Pyramid. So they wanted to reach some kind of peak of knowledge. This was a time when all mankind spoke a common tongue, one that was known as Vril. That's interesting. The Germans were into their Vril society. And apparently we're building those flying saucers. This tongue was fragmented into many different pieces, and is why we have so many intriguing labyrinth etymologies amongst the various languages of the earth. The story of the Tower of Babylon represents a program which was injected into the morphogenic grid in order to ignite division in mankind. The rivalry between the Jews and Nazis, which still exists to this day, is a primary example. Next, we will look at a man who, although he lived among the most powerful people on the Third Reich, did everything he could to heal the rift between these two peoples. So, what if I said maybe that the Nazis are now in cahoots with the Zionist Jewish folks against the rest of us? With that note, I got one little press release I'd like to go over on this video, and it will be finished. Alright, a current essay press release on an alternate website, the Dave Hodges Common Sense Show. I pay attention to numerous websites, Infowars.com, Steve Quayle, many different websites. This one here is pretty interesting. A lot of people know, people watching my videos probably know. Jade Helm is going on. They've been dispersing equipment and troops and forces throughout the United States, building more FEMA camps, apparently out of closed Walmarts and even Target stores and other facilities. And we know that apparently the government has numerous major installations, cities if you will, underground. And truck drivers have reported delivering supplies. Army bases, truck drivers have reported delivering guillotines. People have become aware of the government buying hollow point bullets and a lot of other weaponry. The federal government is shipping SWAT-type vehicles to the police departments and all kinds of other riot gear that's just too crazy, too much, too unbelievable. It's like the Andy Griffin and Barney Fife days are gone with Mayberry. We've come to this Mad Max reality. So anyways, with this Jade Helm thing, we have an update. And 14 September 2015, after reviewing the data that has been streaming in over the past several months, I have concluded that there is a strong possibility that the United Nations has taken over Jade Helm operations, and that was the intention all along. And it is not just Jade Helm operations that the American people should be concerned about. All Americans should be worried that the UN is taking over many facets of the American military and political. The United Nations is positioning for the takeover of the United States. Now remember, the United Nations is controlled by the Zionist banksters Illuminati, which probably includes the Nazi regime and a lot of black ops programs by secret services, FBI, CIA, NATO, MI6, Mossad of Israel. All these elites running the world right now, faking it with the global warming and then global cooling and then climate change, which the climate has always changed. Sustainability, they're destroying everything. If they weren't destroying it, we wouldn't have any problems. And they united everything all under one large corporation instead of independent farmers and power supply systems of the electric grid. They've connected everything so they can turn it all off. Fluoride in the water, sky spraying, HARP systems, Ebola plague threats, World War III threats, terrorist threats. It just goes on. And fabricating these shootings with people who look like they're under some kind of mind control, a state like a zombie. Meanwhile, Jade Helm is going on, and this press release came out yesterday. Is the UN in control of Jade Helm? The ominous implications. So these are some of the vehicles that have UN labels on them, symbols. And one really gets you right here. UN Police Weapons Enforcement. You can go look up this document. Weapons Enforcement, where my finger is here. And then they got these UN trucks and UN tanks. And we've just gone over the Jewish utopia and with Peter Moon implicating the Nazis and that regime. All that with the money and the banksters and of course the Georgia USA Guidestones wanting to reduce the population to 500 million worldwide. So about 6 billion people have to die. And Jade Helm in Washington State. All white attack helicopters may be United Nations. The video evidence below is inconclusive. However, on June 15, 2015, video raises the question whether or not the United Nations is involved in the Jade Helm activities. There is what you know and what you can prove. I am certain that the helicopters videotaped above the skies of Washington are United Nations because of other related events. Hard evidence of United Nations military action on American soil. The following was published on September 8, 2015, just recently, and it represents the 5th train loaded with military vehicles going through to Hatchapel City, Tehachapi, California, in the last 30 days. 5 train loads of military equipment. The trains were headed west along with 2 sighted convoys on the California State Highway 58. So they're shipping these military equipment by trains and highways, which were all headed west. Massive UN military vehicles spotted on train. Gary Frenchie, featured below, released the following video last week depicting a massive shipment of United Nations military equipment through the heartland of America outside of Wheatland, Illinois. Frenchie's questions and observations speak volumes as to the gravity of this threat in the following video. So if you go look up this document, you can watch all those videos. When you cut and paste these articles, it doesn't copy the videos, links, or the pictures. Cash for clunkers, or an UN occupation force. The following video report was made in the early unofficial days of Jade Helm on May 22, 2015, outside of Jacksonville, Florida. The sheer number of United Nations vehicles is very troublesome. Jacksonville, Florida. There is no other interpretation than the fact that this is an occupation force. So the United States is presently being occupied while everybody stands by and watches, waiting for them to pull the trigger, so to speak, on martial law and shutdown of the United States, seizing everybody's wealth and property, 401ks, Social Security checks will probably stop, electricity will probably be turned off, shopping centers will be closed, gas stations will be closed, and I hope I'm completely wrong. I just read these reports. You decide. Domestic participation and absorption of U.S. military units into the United Nations Military Command. At the 5-minute mark of the following video, we see the UN military combat troops keeping the peace in Somalia. There is nothing to be concerned about here, now is there? However, the UN troops were actually American military, who were members of the 502nd from Fort Campbell. I cannot help but wonder how American soldiers feel about wearing blue berets of the United Nations. So I hope if any of our troops are watching this video and the other material, they will step forward and start warning everybody. The story takes an ominous turn when it is revealed that these same UN mercenaries were involved in joint training exercises sponsored by the United Nations in Arkansas. And what was their mission? The troops were going house to house in training exercises known as Algier Provider. Shockingly, the year was 1994, so this has been going on for a long time and in planning in the making. In 2013, the following video also depicts official Navy confirmation of UN troops using American military assets going house to house again. Massive amounts of command vehicles and portable detention pods are spotted outside Oklahoma City. In the past few days, I have sent several photographs by no less than 3 people who spotted a massive train. The pictures contain the following disturbed images. Ask yourself why these are needed on American soil. To understand their purpose, refer to the above paragraphs. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So I reduced the size of these. I think you can see them. Man, so much equipment being shipped all over the United States. Now! And don't forget, the Pope is speaking before the UN next week, speaking before Congress next week, and meeting with Obama next week. I don't think a pope's ever come to America to speak before Congress. And it's a Jesuit Pope, the military arm of the Vatican, the Jesuits. I could fill volumes of books with the related information I have compiled. This is only the tip of the iceberg. One of my many military advisors tells me the United Nations officers are being embedded into Jade Helm. These are these military units performing exercises all over the United States right now, so-called pretending to apprehend dissidents, people who are not going to go along, in the United States. Inch by inch, the takeover will be a cinch. This is being done so covertly that the general public will not know what hit them when the time is right. And what will hit the American people? This will be the topic in the next article in this series. Common Sense Show. This one really gets me. Weapons enforcement. So they're going to announce that everybody has to turn in their weapons. And they got all kinds of vehicles to back that up. Are they going to declare war on the USA people? Certainly seems like it. So I thought I'd just look at a couple other things quickly. November 11th, Republic Magazine, Politics with an Edge, A Dark Hand of History, The New World Order, The Order of the Skull and Bones, Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, The Bohemian Grove, everything I've been talking about. There's a magazine I bought a few years ago. What was the date on this one? Issue 11, I don't see a date here. I think it was 2009. Stuff we've been studying, the dark hand of history, in the books I've been reviewing. Look at this hand here. Freemasons, Templars, Hiram, Illuminati, United States Congress. The dark hand of history. Remember, this series is Freemasonry and Satanism. Look at this by my finger, the big Freemason sign. So people have been trying to get the word out for quite a few years. Most people just aren't buying it, even while they're dispersing troops across the United States. Let's see if there's anything else I want to look at. There was an interesting article. The Order of the Skull and Bones. George Bush's daddy, his daddy, John Kerry, Secret Brotherhood of Destiny. Didn't we just go over that with the Nazis and the Freemasons? Continuing to look at this magazine. And some institutions that are controlling the United States that are non-elected, non-governmental. The Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission. So they have meetings, making decisions to, I guess, turn the whole planet into a communist nation. And then the Bohemian Grove, where are all of our many of our elected leaders and high-level corporate CEOs and other elitists meet at the Bohemian Grove, where they have a big fire in a bottom of a gigantic owl, Moloch, the demon god, and apparently they throw a baby into the fire. Illuminati sacrificing rituals. The New World Order in introduction. So I'm not trying to read this, I'm just trying to say that I've been studying this stuff for years. And another magazine I got by the Republic magazine quite a while ago. This one. Have so much documentation proving that 911 was an inside job, and all this stuff is causing national security and the loss of our freedoms. Just trying to show you, I've been studying this for years, and a lot of people have been studying this also. We got the 911 timeline, which kind of shows something was up. Webster Tarpley, in one of my videos I went over, exposes all of the information about 911. Here's something interesting I found recently. Glenn Beck, a lot of people have heard of Glenn Beck. Will Israel be destroyed in our lifetime? So they're trying to make Iran and the Arabs out to be evil demons so they can destroy them. And from my reading of the Jewish Utopia and Peter Moon's material with the Nazis, the Aryans, the Ku Klux Klans, the Freemasons, Illuminati, Jesuits at the Vatican, the United Nations controlled by these same forces. So they're trying to paint a picture that the Arabs are evil. And apparently Glenn Beck is promoting that, which makes his material suspect to me. The supreme leader of Iran makes the intentions of his nuclear ambitions very clear. Death to America, death to Israel. So it's all propaganda, in my opinion. The American and Jewish people are now facing the greatest threat since the days of World War II. Well, if you read about the Jewish Utopia, which was published in 1932, before World War II, they were the biggest threat to the world. And ISIS and Al-Qaeda are made up of mercenaries hired by the CIA and Israel and NATO and all these elitist forces also. But they're trying to make the Arabs out to be the evil ones. So it just doesn't stop. Meanwhile, in the United States, they're moving forward with the wrenching transformation of America, Agenda 21. So in future videos, I need to go over more of this stuff. completely crazy what they're trying to do. Take over the complete environmental controls and resources and agriculture and mining and power plants and water. We, the people, have zero rights, zero freedoms. I should say, those of us that are left alive. So, I'm going to continue doing this and maybe in the future do a book review just on this book. I just should read the back of this. Discover the Nazis' deepest secrets. The Black Sun continues the intriguing revelations readers have come to expect from Peter Moon, as he digs deeper than ever before into the mysterious synchronicities that have made his work so popular. The Black Sun, I guess that's the flag, is an adventure in consciousness that reveals a vast array of new information, from the German flying saucer program to the SS mission into Tibet. We are led on a path that gives us the most recent, insightful look ever into the Third Reich. And this next chapter, that after I did that one with the Secrets of Judah in this video, the next one's really interesting. Talks about this Dr. Felix. But it also ties in the Star Wars series of movies, Star Wars, and the Philadelphia Experiment, Schindler's List, Raiders of the Lost Ark. See how all this stuff connects? The forces, the dark force, fighting the good people, destroying planets and peoples, crazy weaponry. I'm going to continue studying this stuff. And if you want to go online and try to find Robert Williams' book, The Ultimate World Order, which he wrote upon discovering the Jewish book called The Jewish Utopia, published in 1932, about these Jewish people's plans for taking over the world, which is seriously vicious in its description of what they're going to do, matching the protocols of Zion before World War II. So think about that. Then World War II comes along, and the Jews in Germany were causing quite a lot of problems. Remember, in World War I, the Jews were leaving Russia, and their safe haven was in Germany. Prior to World War I, during World War I, safe haven was in Germany. While in Germany, because they wanted their state of Israel, they backstabbed the German government and sided with England in the war. And during the tribunals after the war, where Germany lost then, this stuff came out. And the Germans realized they were betrayed by the very people that they were taking in as host, rescuing from the Russian Tsar and all that, where they were treated badly. So after World War I, when they were discovering all these treacherous activities by these Jews that they had befriended, allowed to buy properties, own businesses, grow seriously in the societies, had backstabbed them. So that hatred had to be festering in Germany prior to World War II. So if they, and we went over this in one of my previous videos. So Hitler and Himmler and all those people wanted to get those Jewish people out of the country. They couldn't trust them. So how does that relate to today? With Jade Helm and cameras and monitoring everybody's cell phone and computer usages, purchases, all this stuff, spying on the people. And I guess going to have to microchip and monitor anybody, and anybody who resists those activities will probably be beheaded or shot or incarcerated, FEMA camps, starved to death. Wouldn't it be so nice if I'm completely wrong? But we're looking at the evidence. And, well, you know, hundreds of hours. We're up to series number 67. This is the 4th video in this 67 series. There were 3 in 66, 3 in 65, 3 in 64. Hundreds of hours, a couple hundred books, many documents, thousands of photos I've shown people, press releases and documents. Something is going on in our world, and it would behoove us to wake up. I'm pro-American, pro-Constitution, and I'm a Christian. So that puts me on the top of every one of their list. Rick Miracle reporting.